We're all here to talk about the rites of passage and why inclusion in high school leads to greater opportunities in adult lives. And I want to start the presentation this morning with you by telling you a little bit about myself and why I'm up here in front of you today. Hi, come on in. As it says up here as in your program, I'm Mary Schuh. I am an associate director with the Institute on Disability at the University of New Hampshire. And I've been working with the Institute for about 25 years. And the focus of all of my work at the Institute is on this topic of inclusion. And I'm particularly passionate about inclusion in our schools. I spend a lot of my time consulting to school districts, working in classrooms, meeting with families, figuring out the challenges and helping to break down the barriers that exist that prevent students with disabilities from being full members of their neighborhood school, the general education classroom with supports. I also coordinate, provide direction to what we have in New Hampshire called the New Hampshire Leadership Series. It's modeled after Partners in Policymaking program, which exists around the country. Anyone here a graduate of a Partners in Policymaking program? Great, Vicki, so you'll know what I'm talking about. And this is a program where parents who have children with disabilities and adults with disabilities come together for a 7-month-long intensive experience. Every weekend, one weekend a month, they come together to learn about best practices in the disability field, the history of the disability, the world of disability, best practices, how to achieve those practices in their own lives through community organizing, through using the legislative process. And so we have in New Hampshire about 800 graduates of the Leadership Series, and all of those individuals have been really well trained in why is it so important that we are working to make sure all of our schools include all students and support them well. Prior to my work at the Institute, I was a special education teacher. And I was trained to be a special education teacher to teach in segregated, self-contained environments. Actually, my training when I graduated produced a specialist in the area of severe and profound multiple disabilities. That was me. We were trained to support students in a very categorical manner, educably, mentally retarded, trainably, mentally retarded, severe and profound, and that's the program from which I graduated. And I graduated from my program, high honors, went off, got a job, and I was determined to be the best special education teacher one could possibly be. So I used all these amazing skills that I had and started teaching. And I taught a population of students who had labels of severe disabilities. And I taught students who were between the ages of 16 and 21. And I taught in segregated environments and then self-contained classrooms in an inclusive school, or not inclusive school, in a public school setting. And as I was teaching these students, using everything that I'd learned on how to be a great teacher, I started to realize that no matter how great a teacher I was for these students in these separate environments, my students were not graduating. Well, first of all, they weren't graduating. My students were not educating the school system. They were not leaving their academic careers and going on to get jobs. They weren't going on to live on their own. They definitely weren't going to college. They were traditionally leaving my program and entering into another program very similar, except it was supported by the adult service system. So they were leaving my segregated program and going into another segregated program in a day activity type program, and if they were lucky, maybe a sheltered workshop. So I started to really question the practices that I was engaged in. I mean, in education, we believe that we're preparing students for enviable, amazing adult lives so that they can be contributing members of our communities, valued members of our communities. But in my experience, that wasn't happening. So I really began to question, what is this thing called special education? What is so special about it? And while I'm doing everything I was taught to do, community-based instruction, functional skills, my students were not being well prepared to be contributing members of their communities or valued members of the community. So I went back, learned about inclusive education, became an inclusion facilitator, and all of a sudden realized, wow, when students are being educated alongside their typical peers and being provided with supports from preschool through 12th grade, didn't matter what grade we were talking about, when students with disabilities were being educated alongside their typical peers, provided with supports, they were meeting their educational goals faster. Their educational goals became more meaningful. They were leaving school more likely to get a job that they were paid to do. They were leaving school and potentially going to college with friends and creating lives of their own, of meaning. So I knew that we had to stop what we were doing and start doing something new. So I got really excited about this whole notion of inclusion, especially at the high school level. So a little bit more about myself. I have a daughter, Lucy. She's 16. She's a junior at Concord High School. She keeps me honest if ever I come up with some wacky idea around supporting kids with disabilities or the way high schools should run. She reminds me what it's really like in the schools, and we have some great conversations about it. So that's a little bit about me. How many special education teachers are in the room right now? Okay, great, good. So you can probably relate a little bit to my own background. How many parents who have kids with IEPs are in the room? Great. Hopefully some of my examples will be something that you'll be able to take back to your families and support some positive changes. What about regular high school teachers? Excellent, welcome. So glad you're here. I teach at the University of New Hampshire, and my absolute favorite class to teach is supporting students with disabilities at the high school level for general educators. And I typically have like a room of 30 future high school teachers, you know, the biology teacher, the music teacher, the gym teacher, the history teacher, and it's always so exciting and fun to have that room full of future teachers. Who am I missing? Support staff, like related service or paraprofessionals? Great, great. Administrators. Donna, you're an administrator.
No, I'm a parent and what is it called? Related service provider.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. So today we're going to talk about just a little bit about planning begins early. School is more than the required courses. We're going to be talking a lot about rites of passage, not just participation in general academics. And we're going to spend a big chunk of time talking about why not community-based instruction, how we're moving away from community-based instruction to support all students in the high school environment full-time. And I've got a few stories. I hope you're not storied out after Patrick. His were fantastic. I want to just talk about planning for the future begins early. It's never too early to start planning for what your adult life, what the possibilities are for your adult life. And this is the Dillon family. And I met Brianna Dillon, who's sitting on the lap of her mom, Ann. I met Brianna when she was 3 years old, and her parents got connected to the Institute on Disability, and they were looking for ideas for their daughter's life. Her daughter, when Brianna was born, she was born with a label of Aicardi syndrome. Anybody familiar with that? It affects girls. It's similar. It involves a lot of medical complications. It's a neurological disability. And when Brianna was born, the doctors told her parents that Brianna should go into a pediatric nursing home because her medical concerns were so severe that she could never be cared for at home, and that the parents needed to go, try to have some more kids. And the Dillons said, absolutely not. Brianna's our baby. We're going to bring her home. We're going to treat her like like her older brother and sister, Kayla and David. And the doctors let the Dillons know that Brianna probably wouldn't live more than a year. And the Dillons said, well, if Brianna only has a year to live, she's going to have a really lovely, happy, loved, well-loved year in our family. So a year goes by. Brianna is continuing to thrive and grow. And when Brianna was astounding all the doctors, the family needed to make a decision at age 3. What happens with Brianna? You know, she still has a lot of medical complications. And the family decided they had learned about inclusive education and that they wanted to create as positive a life and future for Brianna as imaginable. So Brianna went to regular preschool and was supported well. Brianna continued to challenge the medical profession, that they were told that Brianna was probably going to not live beyond 5, then probably not going to live beyond 10, and then the family just gave up listening to the doctors and decided, we're just going to make sure Brianna has a fabulous life and is well supported. Brianna was the little girl in her community who taught her community how to revise the whole transportation system, because for Brianna's family, they said Brianna's going to grow up in as typical a life as possible. She's not going to ride the little yellow bus. She's going to ride the bus with her peers. So they had to create this whole new transportation system where all the buses now have seat belts, and also some of them have the potential for tie downs as well as car seats inserted in them. So Brianna's family changed that school district. And when Brianna was ready to enter high school, the challenge seemed to be greater. Like, now that Brianna's entering high school, she continues to need full-time support. She doesn't express herself with her voice. She has a lot of medical complications. What is she going to do in high school? And her family, once again, said, we're not going to straddle the line. You know, she's been included through preschool, elementary school, middle school. She has a wide circle of friends, and together we're going to figure it out. So Brianna entered high school, took all the required classes, that for any freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. This is Brianna for her high school prom. She had a lot of friends who came over and helped decorate her wheelchair and figure out what she was going to wear. And when Brianna left school at age 18, because she wasn't going to be first year, second year, third year senior, it was really important that Brianna experienced all the rites of passage. And one of those rites of passage is high school graduation at age 18. And then considering what happens beyond age 18. What's typical for that family? What is within that family's cultural schema that Brianna should also be considering? Well, in that family, when the kids graduate from high school, they go on to college. And so that became a goal for Brianna as well. And Brianna's communication system, as I said, she didn't express herself with her voice. She mostly used eye gaze and facial expressions, and no matter how hard we tried to connect her to the greatest and latest in assistive technology, we still couldn't figure it out. But we still always believed that Brianna was fully comprehending and capable of understanding everything going on around her, and that when she was unhappy, we knew it, and when she was happy, we knew it. So and her friends were a good source of support too. So here's Brianna graduating from high school. And Brianna did go on to the University of New Hampshire, and she took classes in early childhood. And she went on to get a job in her local preschool. She would go in and support kids in play areas. She loved working with kids. And she worked a couple hours a week in her local preschool. She also started her own business, a granola making business called Brinola that she did out of her home and sold at various venues like a local store or a church fair. She had individual customers. So she had a pretty full life. And when I talk about Brianna now, I think about, and I use the past tense because Brianna died last spring. And I say she had a pretty full life, and she was a contributing, valued member of her community. She was well known and well loved, and at her funeral in last April, there were over 300 people in the church, 300 people whose lives that she touched, who she made a difference, who, if she had not been fully included, if she had followed the doctor's orders, and the countless number of special educators in her life who were recommending something other than Brianna to have a fully typical life involving all the rites of passage as any other child in that community, a lot of people would have missed out. A lot of, Brianna truly did touch so many lives. Her health was so compromised, it finally gave out, but to this day, Brianna still maintains that kind of influence. Similar story, Marika Steer, her family, when Marika was born, same questions. Where's Marika going to go? How's she going to spend her educational career? Special education, regular education. The special preschool that involves every related service provider you can imagine, specifically for kids with cerebral palsy and physical disabilities, or does she go to the ABC building blocks preschool? Family chose a building block preschool. Marika went through a typical educational experience. And since this is about the rites of passage, what I want to tell you about Marika, her family would call us on a regular basis and say things like, okay, Marika came home from school today with a sign-up form to try out for cheerleading. I don't know, is this the time I'm supposed to tell her that she has a significant disability? How is she going to try out for cheerleading? I don't want to crush her. I don't want to break her heart. Marika wants to be a cheerleader. What do we do? Well, in all of our wisdom, we said, let's try to figure it out. It's a rite of passage. It's what Marika's interested in. It's what her girlfriends are doing. Cheerleading was also a very, very, as many high schools, very highly competitive sport. And if Marika tries out, she's most likely not going to make the team. And how's Marika going to feel about that? Well, we kind of prepared the judges and the coaches ahead of time that Marika would be trying out, and that we encouraged them to open their minds to think about what is being a cheerleader involved, what are all the different qualities of being a cheerleader. Well, the coach knew those things a lot more than I do. I wasn't a cheerleader in high school. But the coach said, yes, physical aptitude is really important, but equally important to physical aptitude is spirit, enthusiasm, commitment to the school, commitment to the team. And Marika displayed all those things in her cheerleading audition, and she was accepted as a member of the team. Other girls were cut. Marika wasn't cut. Why? Because Marika exhibited all those characteristics that were equal to that were larger than the characteristics that she wasn't capable of exhibiting in the same way as other girls. So it was the ability to be creative and open-minded. Marika's cheerleading team came in second that year in the state competition. And what was really cool about it is the whole team figured out new ways of doing cheers, because they all of a sudden had this very strong and steady base for things like pyramids and jumping and, cool ways to attach streamers and the formations that cheerleaders do. So it wasn't a hindrance. It was an advantage to that team. And they came in second, not because they had a girl in a wheelchair on their team. They came in second because they had a fantastic routine. So, rite of passage, taking risks, allowing your children, your students to imagine all the possibilities that are afforded in a high school environment, and to take the risks and to sign up and to be supported in experiencing those opportunities. Another really, really great phone call from Linda Steer, Marika's mom, was when she called up and she said, okay, Mary, thanks a lot. All this, inclusion path that we've been on all these years. Marika wants to sign up for driver's education. I said, Linda, why are you calling? You don't know by now? I mean, if Marika wants to sign up for driver's education, which is a rite of passage, which every 16-year-old just about in that school is signing up for and taking. And we have all sorts of advances in technology that allow people to learn how to drive if they don't drive in traditional ways. Why wouldn't we support Marika to sign up for driver's ed? mean, even if she never drives, isn't it still important for her to learn the rules of the road? Do we agree with that or don't we? And I think that we do. And so why wouldn't we encourage students like Marika or any other student with a disability who at age 16, why would we not encourage them, regardless of their disability, to take a class like driver's ed? So those rites of passage. Now Marika, she did take driver's ed. She got a fabulous score on the written exam. She took it with her friends after school, because that's when they take it. And she's not driving, but she does know the rules of the road, and she's quick to instruct people on the rules of the road when she passes, speed limits and stop signs and all those things. But she has been experimenting with adapted vehicles with the thought that she might someday drive her own vehicle. Who knows? Why would we limit her? Why would we reduce those opportunities? So a little bit back, Marika did graduate at 18 with her peers. Marika uses a communication system. I think she uses a Dynavox to express herself now. She's had so many over the years. She uses a motorized wheelchair. And she now is a partial owner in a business called Sarah Care. And Sarah Care is an organization in New Hampshire that provides support to people who are aging to live in their homes and live in the community. And so Marika is part of a team of recreational therapists who provide activities for older people who need that kind of support during the day. So Marika actually graduated from high school, and during the period of 18 to 21, Marika took some courses in small business ownership, and she took some courses in geriatric, and she financially went in on this company that was starting a new business in her community. And by doing that, she's pretty much guaranteed herself a job for the rest of her life, should she stay in that profession. But when Marika was in high school, not only was she cheerleading and learning to drive, she also earned community service credits by volunteering in a nursing home after school, or during, I can't remember what class it was that it wasn't a community-based instruction experience, it was a community service, earned high school credits by participating. I think it was a psychology course that she started to realize that she really did like hanging around with old people and providing support, and people that Marika got connected to were really responsive to her as a person. So at this moment in time, it's a good match for Marika. So thinking about those rites of passage and how Marika participated over the years. So I know Patrick Schwartz just did this. I swear he must have seen my PowerPoint ahead of time and stolen it from me. But I want you to just take a moment and think about do it again, or we don't even have to take that long because you just did it upstairs with Patrick. But tell me about some of your most memorable high school experiences. Feel free. Yes?
I've traveled a lot, and I grew up in different countries. And when I moved to the States, I had a passion for singing, but I was ridiculously shy, and I couldn't sing in front of people. And there was a choir instructor who made me sing in front of the 400-person choir, and it finally was the catalyst that I needed to kind of like push me forward. And I became, totally committed to that choir, sang 3 choirs a day. And I mean, it was a wonderful experience that
Excellent.
It's one of those places that crossed all those other little groups.
Yep.
So
yep.
coming into a place as a junior, you don't feel included. I get that.
So that experience helped make you the person you are today. Yep. And we will be asking you to sing for us at the end of this session to demonstrate the effectiveness of your high school experience. Oh, thank you. That's a great example. What about some others? Yes, Karen.
I was an exchange student,
Okay.
so I went to Germany twice. That was huge, experience in high school.
Okay, let's talk about that as a rite of passage, being an exchange student. How about opening your minds to the possibility of students with disabilities participating in those exchange experiences, learning about other cultures, traveling? Think about the number of skills, the skills you learned. Tell us some of the skills you learned by being an exchange student.
I think the biggest thing that, well, there were several things that I took away from this experience, the culture of the diversity of the expectations. I mean, the high school students over there were very political. They knew more about my government than I did, and I was embarrassed. So I came back and I started learning more and being more involved. And then, just their idea with, America's supposed to be liberated and free and choice and all that, but it's, the advertising over there, they had naked people all over the place. And
Yep.
It was
Yep.
just a totally different culture.
That's a great example, and I love it, and it's what I'm going to include in future presentations, the opportunity to experience other cultures through exchange programs in high school. When was the last time you saw a student with a disability doing that? Sean Dunham. Bonnie Dunham's son. Sean Dunham was in high school and he was being supported. There were a number of refugees from Africa who were working in Sean's community. And for a summer, or for credit experience, Sean went back to, I can't remember the country that he went to, but he earned high school credit for experiencing a country in Africa and they were allowed to, he wasn't part of a formal exchange student program, but that was my first experience, and I'd love to see more of them. What about other people's high school memories that really stick out? Yep.
Getting in trouble.
Getting in trouble, getting grounded. Absolutely. Let's think about students with disabilities. Again, Patrick Schwartz had these examples at a preschool level. How about at a high school level? Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm not answering the right question.
Oh,
I was in a singing and dancing group.
wait, I want to get back to getting in trouble.
Oh, I did that. You don't want to know.
Okay. Well, actually, maybe we do.
We did a lot of bad things.
But for students with disabilities, so often, like the more significant the disability, more often it's 100% of the time, they have an adult glued to their side. Is that not right? The paraprofessional, the aide, whatever you want to call that person, the special ed teacher, monitoring their every single movement. They don't have the experience of taking risks and getting in trouble like typical kids do. So I think that getting in trouble is really important. It's how we learn a lot of life lessons. So let's take a couple more rites of passage examples.
Did she say dancing?
Dancing and singing. Yep.
I know I heard somebody upstairs say how they got involved with special needs in high school, and that's what I did too. And I've been a special ed teacher for 20 years. So.
Okay. So you got involved with students with disabilities, and it allowed you to choose your career. So many of us, from our rites of passage experiences in high school, we chose our careers as adults. If we aren't allowing students with disabilities the opportunity to experience rites of passage in high school, how can we expect them to know what they want to be as a grown-up? If we're constantly making those choices for them of what special ed classroom they need to be in, what functional skill they need to learn, what community-based instruction experience we want to try them out in, because these are the 4 different job sites that we've negotiated within our community, and that's where students are going. If students with disabilities aren't being exposed to, allowed to participate in all the same opportunities as kids without disabilities, how do we expect them to become well-rounded adults? This is my high school. There I am up there. And this is a rite of passage I'll never forget in biology class. Dissecting a fetal pig. Do they still allow you to do that in high schools today? Cats in high school, really? Yeah. Well, I really can't tell you much about the biology of a fetal pig. In fact, I can't tell you anything about it. But I can tell you that Holly, Patty, and Michelle were my 3 best friends in high school and continue to be friends of mine today. And I don't know if you noticed that Charlie's Angels look alike, but I was definitely modeling myself after Kate Jackson, and Holly was Farrah Fawcett, and Michelle, she thought for sure she was Jacqueline Smith, but we got in more trouble. We learned more life lessons. We took more risks. We danced together. We played together. We had our first tango drink of orange juice and vodka together and learned how not to drink. We explored colleges together. We shared everything. All those rites of passage that helped make us the people that we are today. Holly, Michelle, Patty. So some rites of passage examples. Let's talk about these. How many of these are really available to students in our high schools with disabilities? How many students with disabilities in your high school, or if they're your son or daughter, have a cell phone and get in trouble for texting or use texting to make plans with friends and let their parents know when to pick them up and where? Anybody? Your kids? Driver's education. We talked about that earlier. Big rite of passage. Skipping school. Holly, Patty, Beth, Stephanie, Michelle, and I, we knew how to sneak out of the gym window and hop on a bread delivery van, the convenience store next door, and get them to drive us downtown when we all didn't have classes on an afternoon. That was pretty creative. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a 17-year-old with autism, and he took driver's education, and it was one of those, okay, we're going to let him do it as a rite of passage. He turned out to be the best driver I have.
Excellent.
So
Great.
He's never going to go on the freeway. He's going to drive around our neighborhood and go to the grocery store and places, but he certainly exceeded our expectations.
That's great. Great example. So all of these examples, I mean, yes,
Well,
Donna.
I have a question, and maybe you're going to address it, but I guess I'm thinking about the challenges and the how. So if our answer is no, there's so many barriers to me. There's so many barriers in the schools already. I mean, that's what's striking me. You know, like, so I don't know if you've worked with school districts or schools, or, you know, I'm certainly in some cases it's parents. In my case, it's not parents as the barrier, but definitely the schools and the systems, and because, you know, you feel like as one person, how can you create, or even as 5, 6 parents, how can we create a whole new culture? Because a lot of our kids in our local high school do not have these things.
Why not? What specifically?
Well, it depends on the kids, you know, but I mean,
You're not going to teach them to skip school or something. They're not going to skip school.
But they don't even have the opportunity, like you said. How do they for instance, a lot of typical kids in our local high school. My daughters go to our local high school, so I know that, you know. And then my daughters without disabilities. My son's actually still in middle school with a disability, but I'm preparing. But in any case, like for instance, just going to lunch, right? All the typical kids are allowed to go to lunch together, and that's when they can go get in trouble if they want. You know, they can go smoke pot in the corner if they want. But the kids with disabilities don't even go to lunch with their peers. They go to the cafeteria with a para-pro. That's what they do.
Well, that's when you need.
Diane, you had your hand raised.
I did, and I think one of the barriers that we have is with us general education teachers, because at the high school level, everybody's specialized. I'm a social anatomy phys, an art teacher, zoology teacher, so we're specialized in our areas, and we're not trained. And any of us would be successful because you had the community come together. But you don't train us at the grassroots level. You know, you have a class of 30, 35 kids, you know, you have your inclusion kids, your general ed kids, whatever's in your classroom. But if you haven't been trained to meet everybody's needs, I mean, if I'm going to meet my inclusion kids' needs, boy, I'm sure definitely going to be meeting my general ed kids. And I have an inclusion teacher, and we don't even have time to train. So not only do I not have training, she can't even share with me her training because we don't have the time. So there's two barriers.
Absolutely. I'm not saying this is, I don't want to fool anybody and stand up here and say this is easy. And that you want your child to sign up for driver's ed, sign them up for driver's ed, and then it's going to happen. Absolutely not. But I am going to stand up here and say that until we start having this as an expectation, we are not going to even begin to solve the barriers. And in my experience, and I've traveled around a lot and spent a lot of time in schools and talked to a lot of people, and so I don't think my experience is that unique, unfortunately. And like Barb Buswell said 25 years ago, who would have thought we'd still be doing what we're doing now? We realize how hard it is. But in my experience, this expectations for these rites of passage are not traditional. They are not, these are not expectations that you're going to see in the majority of high schools, in the majority of families, and among the majority of special educators. And so number one strategy, number one, is we need to change our expectations. We need to, you can't look at the barriers yet until you say this is what I want to accomplish. And if your children or your students want to accomplish, I mean, I'm not saying every person has to do every one of these things. This is just a sample list of the kinds of things that are rites of passage. But until we start expecting and believing and acknowledging that it's these experiences that make us the adults we are today. It's not learning the Pythagorean theorem or the anatomy of a fetal pig or how to make change for $1 or make a bed or you know, the things that we either any one of those content areas in special ed or regular ed, that it's these kinds of things that make us the adults we are, and we need to start expecting and believing that students with disabilities should have these same experiences. Karen?
Yeah, as far as like skipping school and all that in detention, if you can get circle of friends in your child's school, then his friend, his or her friend or whatever, will help him to skip school. Or if he wants, you know,
I'm not advocating skipping school up here. I just want to be clear about that.
Well, my director, her son has significant needs, sports, whatever. He has a circle of friends, and you know, he wanted to take beer.
Jamie, you have
Got a beer for him, you know. But
I'm also not advocating underage drinking or skipping school. Jamie, did you have something?
Well, it's not, to me, it's not anything on the specifically, it's just letting them be normal behavior. A normal high schooler who messes up, who texts, who talks to girls, who gets in trouble. That's just what it is.
Yeah. Karen? You had your hand raised?
I did.
I'm not cutting you off, Jamie. I agree with you. Yeah.
I'm a parent, and so our school tends to respond to the legalities. You know, they'll do what they have to do to not get sued. So, can you suggest, you know, how this fits within the, you know, their legal rights and
Same way it does for kids without disabilities. These kinds of experiences are experiences that all students participate in some way, shape, or form. So,
It's ADA 101.
yeah,
All you have to do, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Amber.
It's just like you with your concerns, and something comes up, they don't want them to do driver's ed. All you're going to do is say ADA, and these are my son's rights, and they won't fight you on it. And to have a good support social system, that's one area is what she was talking about with Circle of Friends, which is the worldwide. You
Yep.
just got to find yourself connected.
I want to respond to the general high school teachers' concerns about I've never had the training on how to do this. And again, this workshop right today is not to give you the skills on how to differentiate instruction. But if you go to any good workshop on differentiating instruction and in developing opportunities to plan between regular educators and special educators to create a universally designed classroom, your students with disabilities are going to be benefiting from their participation in your general education classroom, hands down, without a doubt, and it doesn't matter what class it is. And it, you know, as students in high school, I think one of the real benefits of most high school experiences is that students have more choice. So they really can decide whether they want to, you know, take a path of the math and sciences, or take a path of language arts and psychology and history. I mean, I'm amazed at my daughter's choices for what kinds of classes she wants to take, and also the different kinds of teaching styles that exist in our high schools. You know, we have teachers that lecture right up front. We have teachers whose classes are very, very interactive. We have teachers who, you know, my daughter's seen 7 movies already in her language arts class, and she's like, I can't believe we watched another movie today, you know. In her health class, they're doing yoga, and you know, I'm constantly amazed. In our high school is just an ordinary high school, really. It's not any, it's a public high school in Concord, New Hampshire. So the kinds of academic opportunities that students are now have available to them, and we often aren't making sure that students with disabilities are taking advantage of all those different course selections. Yeah.
I'd like to speak to that because I'm a world language teacher. I teach Spanish.
Yep.
And I'm battling the special ed department, and I'm battling the administration in terms of, you know, why isn't this an opportunity for everybody? You know, I'm being told already that, I'm sorry, you know, kids with special needs, they don't have time for that in their schedule. To me, that's a rite of passage just like anything else is. And how do I
agree 100%. Yep.
How do I make that an opportunity? I've had one special needs person in my entire teaching career. My language. She was fantastic. She was a senior who really she just wanted to do Spanish because her brother had done Spanish, and it was an opportunity for her that she thought she needed to experience. And she only did 1 semester of Spanish, and she was in my class with freshmen who were learning Spanish for the first year of Spanish. She was included. She had a group of friends. We did, we do so much.
And
why are we battling?
Yes.
It's like, seems to me like an uphill battle, and I'm not sure, how do we as general ed teachers encourage the school to open up our classes to more people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one way is to get on whatever kind of inclusion task force you might have in your school to start raising these questions among administrative levels. Another way is, just as you said, being open yourself as a classroom teacher to maybe, even if you don't know how to do it, but being open to figuring it out, being open to wanting to figure it out. Because, again, if we think an experience is important for every student in that school, except students with disabilities, then it's important for students with disabilities too. So if we say that, by the time a student graduates from high school, they need to have taken 3 years of a language, and the school offers French, Spanish, Latin, German, I don't know, Japanese, then we better make sure that students with disabilities are taking 3 years of a language.
And they're being counseled against it.
Right. Right. So again, let's go back to expectations, and it's that we're not going to go back into our schools on Monday and have it change overnight, although that would be a beautiful thing. But we need to go back in and begin with the expectation, and acknowledge when it's not happening that it's not happening because we're making concessions and we're making compromises, but we're still working to make sure it happens. And we take whatever strategy we have. If we're a classroom teacher, learning more about differentiated instruction. If we're a school administrator, setting up a task force around diversity and welcoming all students. Getting in consultation around creating classrooms that are universally designed. If you're a parent, making sure it's on that educational transition plan. Yes, Vicki.
I was going to say, if there's a way for you to be able to reach parents and let them know you're welcome, we would love students to come into your classroom, because the same thing, sometimes parents are told, no, that's not a class for your child or whatever, so then parents can seek out special ed teachers who are open to that.
Where would I start with something like that? Through my administration or through?
Find out what parent
Probably do with the 8th
organizations
grade
are.
as they come into the high school.
The curriculum, where they learn about the curriculum for high school, the 8th graders,
Or the parent organization, CF, yeah, contact them and say, can I come in and just speak to the parent?
Are these good ideas, Angie?
Yeah, and I
Good.
have another question that kind of leads on that. Part of the problem is, the grade. And the administrators, the counselors, the parents are concerned about, well, I don't want it to lower the GPA or whatever. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, college, I taught college, we let people audit. Is that an option in your experience? I mean, can we?
I'm not sure what the question
can we
is.
have students like
Audit a class or get a pass-fail or?
completing
You
and
can have modified grades, you can have a different grading scale, grade on
What the educational goals are for that individual student. Yeah, there's all kinds.
something that's
Sure.
standard and
Yep. Yep.
can be applied.
Yep.
They can have their own goals in that classroom specific to them, not necessarily, they have to do everything that everybody else does. Because you give them their grade based on their own ability. Did they improve? Is that a big improvement or a big improvement? Did they learn? What
they
we
may
want
be
to
working
work
on
on.
counting, and you're going to teach them how to work in Spanish rather than in English. So if the goal was for them to count to 10 or whatever, then that's what they're grading.
Karen, I love your example, but I can't let it go completely without saying when students with disabilities are in high school and they're still counting to 10, we need to move beyond that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear that when I'm talking about higher expectations, we are no longer working in special education and education for students with disabilities at any kind of developmental age level, IQ level. We're talking about having high expectations.
The first year language students are learning colors and numbers.
Right. Right, but they're learning it in, yeah, but not because we don't think the student with disabilities knows their colors or numbers. Yeah, so I just needed to. I want to just quickly talk about school sports and be maybe a little provocative around. We offer an awful lot of opportunities for students with disabilities to participate in special sports, segregated sports, exclusive opportunities like Special Olympics or Challenger Leagues, things like that, or ARC organized events. But I don't think we think enough about opportunities within our typical high schools where kids are playing sports. And we used to seriously think if we did support a student with a disability on a team, it was typically as the manager of the school team. And we need to move beyond that. And we've got examples all over the country where kids with disabilities are in high schools actively playing as members of teams. Teams are changing as a result of it. Cultures are changing as a result of it. This is Amro. He has a label of autism. When he first was ready to enter high school, and we were planning for his transition into high school, he'd never been in a regular class in his life. He was coming from a very segregated educational experience, and he was going into high school as a full-time freshman. And we thought the way to get him oriented would be for him to join the school football team, because as you can see, he's kind of a big guy. So we thought, oh, well, we'll put him on the football team. And this was a while ago. We didn't check his preferences as much as we should have, although he does love football. But we did make a decision based on what we thought was in his best interest. It turns out it was a good decision. But the first year he was on the team, he was the manager of the team. And then the second year, when we asked the question, does it make sense for Amro to still be a member of the football team? It was the other football players that said, yeah, we want Amro on the team, but he really needs a uniform and he really needs to practice with us. And it was the third year. It unfortunately didn't take until the third year. Then the team said to us, well, geez, he's got a uniform. He goes to all the games. He practices with us. We really want him to play in a game. So, you know, it wasn't, we weren't so smart about these things. We should have been having him play in the game freshman year. It was the kids who taught us otherwise. So Amro expresses himself by pointing to letters. He's on the field here. Here's his coach. They're communicating a play. His coach is an ordinary coach. He'd never taken a special ed class in his life. He coaches the football team. We talked about Marika as a cheerleader. This is Jen. She's on the volleyball team. She has a label of Down syndrome, but she loves volleyball and lots of other things that her girlfriends love. And interesting story about Jen was at one of the volleyball tournaments. It was a really high pressure game. They were playing another school that was considered to be really high level team. And Jen was out on the court playing volleyball, and the teammates overheard the other team saying, "Oh, look, they've got a retard on their team." And we might look at that situation, I mean, we all cringe inside hearing that example. It's a real example. And it makes my stomach turn. And we can ask ourselves a question. Like, oh, was that a bad idea for Jen to be on the team? Because that level of bullying, making fun of, occurred? Or can we ask ourselves the question, is this a valuable learning opportunity? Which one do we ask? I mean, luckily we just said, took a deep breath and said, what's going to happen next? That's what we asked. And Jen's teammates left the court and said, we're not playing. We're done. We're not playing this team until they apologize. And so it became a valuable learning opportunity. And us as adults, we were able to step back and watch what unfolded. And the other team did apologize, and then the game resumed. But it was definitely a beautiful learning opportunity that occurred. So again, school sports, I'm not a highly competitive person, but if kids want to play on teams, they should be encouraged to play on teams. So you've all heard of Jason McElwain. The video, YouTube video of him went viral. He scored the winning shot on the basketball team. He's a young guy with autism. After school crypto club. Marika heading off to school dance. Amro, the guy who was on the football team, fully supported through high school and all general education, ended up as the prom king his senior year of high school. He still has autism. He still communicates by typing out his letters. Now, he wasn't voted prom king because someone was taking, because he's the boy with a disability in high school. He was voted prom king because he's one of the nicest, most popular kids, and people wanted their school to represent something different that year. And Amro was somebody who represented the community that school liked to portray to others. So you had some questions about how do we support students beyond the school day or in creative activities. I mean, what we're talking about here is really a lot of different creative activities that students, it's not going to school often at 8 and coming home on the special ed bus at 3. This is a life. My daughter, I never see her anymore. She's in National Honor Society on Thursday nights, tennis, on the tennis team every Monday and Wednesday and Friday. She babysits on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she's got Key Club. I never see her. And they're all, except the babysitting, which is her after-school job, school-sponsored events. Yep, you have a, Phyllis?
You know what I was just going to ask about, on your list there, you had like part-time jobs back there.
Yep.
But anyway, asking about after-school activities. We've tried very hard to try to find, jobs for my son, and the thing of liability has come up over and over and over again. People are obsessed with this idea of liability, and I just don't know how to get beyond that. Even him volunteering, my son knows everything there is to know about aquariums and fish. He's a walking encyclopedia. You'd think we could very easily find him some type of job with there, but there is such a stigma about I'm going to have liability if I hire a person with a disability. He does have autism.
Liability on whose part, the school or the employer?
You know, and the school has tried to help find him jobs too, and they're running into the same type of things. Where the school is worried about liability, well, I'm not sure the school is much, but I would have thought that it wouldn't have been that big deal, even for him to just volunteer, you know, talking to people about fish in a fish store. But I'm surprised.
Well, I think liability translates to fear, and it's all about how do you help people overcome their fears, and often it's about relationships and getting to know hopes and dreams and people, and liability is really an excuse for I'm afraid and I don't know how to do this. And we need to start calling things what they are. We really do. We really, in as nice a way as possible, and let people know that liability is not as big an issue as getting to know people and their dreams and I don't know. I hear liability occasionally. Bob?
But I would think that you could write an MOU that the school district would admit that they are the entity that would realize any liability. And if there's a reference, or rather a referral to vocational rehabilitation is responsible for workers' comp and those kinds of things. If there were an accident that happened, and that kind of MOU can be presented to the employer.
Yeah, I would have thought that same type of thing. And it's part of, he actually has a class that's supposed to be finding them jobs. So all these kids are in this class, and none of them have been able to find jobs. So part of it is they haven't done a very good job marketing, obviously. But also, they're not, our DVR won't have anything to do with them until they're out of high school. So they're not interested in short-time jobs. And so they said we only find permanent jobs for people who are already out of high school. So I have specifically, spoken with DVR representatives and all that sort of thing. So they're certainly out of the picture.
Okay, can I interrupt you, Phyllis, and ask a couple questions? Is it a class full of mostly students with disabilities around jobs?
This one is, yes.
Okay, so I'm going back to my definition as I'm talking about all this is fully inclusive schools. So when you've got a job developer, high school job coach, teacher, special educator trying to find jobs for 8, 10, 12, 18, I don't know, however many kids there are in the class, that's not the same as if your son is involved in regular education and connecting with his community and his peers and the people who own businesses in your life in a general ordinary way. Your son is being seen as one of a group.
Right.
And so that in itself is a barrier. So it's because your son is involved in special education and is a very segregated kind of situation, that is probably a bigger barrier than not being able to connect with the aquarium. Because kids in high school, and again, that's up till age 18, after school jobs, weekend jobs, summer jobs, they're usually not your lifetime career. It's usually your chance to experiment on what you might like or might not like, and how to get to work on time, and how to use a time clock, and how to be in a work environment. So, to me, when I hear that example, I don't think of liability as the problem. I think of the very nature of how we're going about trying to find kids jobs in groups, separate. You probably get my point. So,
No, I understand.
yeah. And so just some of these ways of how do you support students. If it's a school-sponsored activity, schools are required to provide the necessary supports. I don't think enough schools or families know that. So if the school is sponsoring an after-school club, a school sports event, a drama club, a theater, dance, you name it, if it happens beyond the school day, the school is actually required by law to provide the supports to students to participate in that. It's and that's not, that's oftentimes seen as a barrier. Also, you mentioned VR, but schools collaborating with as many adult service agencies as possible to during those transition years bring in outside supports. Yep.
Just
just more barriers, but it's just, I think as parents, we are often working to get through these. So as far as like sports and also some of the theater and arts and things like that, I'm just thinking about activities that for other kids require auditions or tryouts,
Yep.
That whole competitive piece. What do you what do you have to say about that? Like, are you expecting the kids to, you know, compete, or are you expecting them to sort of be given a chance to be on the team without competing? I mean, I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, I think about the example of Marika. She wanted to be a cheerleader. And that's a highly competitive, you got to try out to be a cheerleader. So a little bit, but not a lot, of pre-work went into with the coach. And the coach never guaranteed that Marika would make the team, but the coach did guarantee that they would be open-minded and consider other ways of examining how Marika could participate in the team. I mean, I think it's, again, that opportunity to fail and opportunity to take risks is really valuable. But the work that we need to put into these experiences ahead of time is also really valuable. I mean, we need to make sure that, you know, whatever theater, whatever the audition tryout experience is, like, how can we pave the way so it's the most meaningful and optimistic ending possible?